Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for President. Well, this is day 15 of the boycott of the media of my candidacy. And I'm finding out something very important, that the only way for a candidate to get noticed, unless you are Donald Trump, in which case you get noticed for all the indictments that they're bringing against you. But for the other candidates, the only way to get noticed pretty much, particularly like this guy, William Hurd, who attacked Donald Trump and said he's a threat to our country and blah, blah, blah. He's a Republican, by the way. So he got covered in Breitbart, got covered all over the place for an appearance, I think, on CNN, in which he just trashed Donald Trump. So if that's what it takes for the mainstream media to pay attention, forget it. I'm not doing that. I really believe that we owe a debt of thanks to Donald Trump. I believe Donald Trump served this country faithfully and well. And I believe that Donald Trump has been treated grossly unfairly, and he is indicative of the unfair two-tiered system of criminal justice which the Democrats operate, which is basically this. If you agree with them, they like you and protect you. If you're one of them, they like you and protect you. If you disagree with them, they don't like you, and they want to destroy you. Not just argue against your positions, not just try to defeat your ideas, principles. They want to destroy you as a person. And I've said before, it's really not about Donald Trump. It's really about you and me. It's about their desire to bring the American people to heel. That's what it's all about. I mean, just for example, the 2020 election. They basically try to say anybody who doesn't believe that the 2020 election was above board and fair and right and good and the right outcome came out, anybody who doesn't subscribe to that is a conspiracy thinker and is crazy. And look, there were so many irregularities in that election that you can't even begin to count them. Now, that's just a fact. Now, whether the outcome would have been different if everything had been done according to law, we may never know, because, frankly, that's never really been investigated. It really hasn't. What we do know is this. This is a fact. The polls have demonstrated it. That had the Hunter Biden story been dealt with fairly and reported fairly, it would have swung votes, because people would have known that Hunter Biden was indeed a bag man for his father and was running around the world collecting up millions of dollars in behalf of the Biden family, using his influence with the vice president then, and now, of course, the president ultimately, as a way of selling favors to Ukraine, to China, to Russia, or certain characters and oligarchs within these communities. I mean, that's just the fact. And the media hid it. 51 so-called intelligence agents, I call them unintelligent agents in my view, lied about it and said, oh, it's Russian disinformation. I mean, so leaving aside all the potential for fraud and all of the drop boxes and all that stuff. But at any rate, it was not my plan to get into all that today. But all I'm telling you, that I said that simply to say, so the media is boycotting my candidacy. And I think what they're really doing is boycotting the Christian voice. They don't really want the Christian voice to be heard. They really don't. They don't want my perspective to be heard. They don't want your perspective to be heard. If you're a Christian and you share my perspective, they don't want that. I mean, so for example, they don't want someone. When was the last time you saw someone on television say, I'm not calling him Rachel, his name is Richard? Even the conservative media call this guy, the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services, this great big old guy with a blonde wig on his head and a dress on, call him Rachel. Well, he's not Rachel. He's Richard. He's a man. But even the conservative media doesn't want to acknowledge that. Even the conservative media wants to make Bruce Caitlin when he's Bruce. I mean, come on. But so it continues, but we will break through. And I want to thank you all for your prayers, your support. I was out in Goochland County. I endorsed Mike Caudill, who's running for Commonwealth Attorney out there, running for re-election. He's an incumbent, done an excellent job according to all reports. He does have an opponent who I won't even comment on. But I was out there to endorse him and to attend his event, and I had a lot of people come up to me and say, I'm going to vote for you. I'm going to vote for you. I'm going to vote for you. I'm going to support you. Well, how can I help you? So, folks, whether the mainstream media acknowledges it or not, there are a lot of Americans who want a candidate like me and support me, with those who know me, or would support a candidate like me if they knew that I was in the race. But the mainstream media is working very hard to try to make sure that people don't find out that I'm in the race. And like I said, by the grace of God, we're going to overcome all that. Every single bit of it, we're going to overcome it. So, not worried about it, not fretting about it at all. Well, since I'm on this, please follow me on Twitter, EWJacksonSR, and Facebook, EWJacksonSR. In fact, I'm live streaming to Facebook right now, as well as to EWJacksonForPresident.com. So follow me on both of those. Please, excuse me, remember our 2020 Pathway to Victory. I'm asking you to pray for me 20 minutes a week. It's only 3 minutes a day. And I'm not asking you to set aside special time to pray for me. Just include me in your prayer time. And 3 minutes a day is nothing. By the time you get a few sentences out, 3 minutes is gone. But those 3 minutes really matter to me. They really do. And I think they matter profoundly to this campaign. Because when we get our breakthrough, it's going to be on the wings of prayer. It really will. It's going to be on the wings of prayer. Now, don't get me wrong. Our campaign is moving along. It is moving along. Behind the scenes, without the media paying any attention, we are moving along. And I think that the next month between now and August 23rd, I can't tell you for sure I'm going to make the debate stage, but I can tell you that we're moving toward it. We are definitely moving toward it. So that's why your prayers are so important, because we do need a breakthrough. And we're doing everything we can. Faith without works is dead. We're doing everything we can. But we really do need some divine intervention, given the fact that the media has decided that there is not a 14th candidate in the race, that they don't acknowledge that. I'm a legal candidate. I'm a foul candidate. I'm a real candidate. I'm actually campaigning, but they're not acknowledging that. So I'm depending upon the people. You know, the Constitution begins with the words, we the people. Not we the media, not we the prognosticators, the pundits, the politicians, but we the people. So I'm depending upon we the people. Imagine that a citizen in a constitutional republic, the United States of America, would actually depend upon what the Constitution says is the sovereign of the nation, which is the people. Not a king, not a president, not a potentate, but the people. Wow. Imagine that you would depend upon the people. Man, that's revolutionary, given in this day and time. So thank you for your prayers. So 20 minutes of prayer, $20.24. $20.24 for 2024. Give it once, give it twice. Now, one time helps me to get to my 40,000, one time. But you can, if you're able, do that over and over and over and over again throughout the course of this process. Believe me, every little bit helps. And then thirdly, talk to 20 people. And of course, 20 may seem like a daunting number. So if you can't do 20, do 15. Can't do 15, do 10. Can't do 10, do 5. Can't do 5, do 3, do 2. But talk to somebody, okay, about my candidacy. You have to be my media right now. You have to get the word out for me. Okay, all right. With those things, and by the way, don't forget my book, Sweet Land of Liberty, Reflections of a Patriot Descended from Slaves. By the way, if you want a full exposition of where I would lead the country as president, it's in this book. I didn't write the book as a blueprint for my presidency. I wrote the book because I love this country, and I wrote the book to try to save America and to try to give people a perspective on why we ought to love America, even though the left and the Democrat Party are busy trying to tell black folks that they shouldn't love America because of slavery and discrimination and this, that, and the other, and they ought to hate America, be bitter against America, resent America, I guess everything but want to leave America. That's the one thing that nobody's suggesting. And I have the open invitation. If it's really that bad, like I said to some guy, talked about the fact that, you know, we slaughtered the Native Americans to steal their land. I say, well, if you really believe that, why do you continue to live here? Why wouldn't you leave? Why wouldn't you leave and go somewhere where you think that the land or the nation's borders have not been established through blood, through battle, through conquest? I said, oh, only one problem. There is no such place. Okay, let me get to this. I said yesterday, I really wanted to spend some time talking about race, and I'm going to do that today, okay? Because, look, folks, I really believe that race is the poison pill that the left is using to try to set this country up, to turn us into a totalitarian, a tyrannical, a Marxist, a socialist, a communist country. I've said this before. America is such an upwardly mobile society. You take someone like me, you've heard my background, born into poverty, placed in foster care at 14 months old. I remember growing up with literally no food in the house, and I would be sent to the supermarket to try to get some food on credit. And I remember Miss Madeline, it was Madeline's supermarket, Miss Madeline would say, you tell your parents that they got to pay down on the bill. And I mean, I would usually walk away with food, but often there was nothing else to eat. So we ate biscuits and syrup, we ate mayonnaise sandwiches until some food came in. Now, I tell you what, I do notice that whenever the preacher came to visit, because these were good Southern folks, whenever the preachers came to visit, we had a spread. No question about that. But not always, but often during the week it was cornbread and buttermilk, which I wouldn't eat. You couldn't pay me to eat that stuff, but my foster mother loved it. So I was born into poverty, raised in foster care, and then from the age of 10 years old until I was grown by a single dad. I never lived in a home. I lived in apartments all my growing up life. I take that my foster parents had rented a little shotgun house. In fact, there are pictures of it, I think, on my Facebook page. Yeah. So that's my background. Now here I am, a successful author, a speaker, a candidate for President of the United States, a graduate of Harvard Law School, summa cum laude graduate of college, passed 2 bar exams. All my children, our children, my wife's, are successful. Nobody is struggling, homeless. In other words, you go from where I was born to where I am now, and in terms of financial wealth, people do far better than I've done. I mean, people go from the same kind of poverty I was born into to billionaire status. Well, in a society like that, you can't convince people that the society is unjust and unfair and there's no choice, there's no opportunity, there's no way to move up. You're stuck in poverty. You're stuck in the dregs. You can't, because it's not true. Every American, excuse me, folks, every American dreams for their children, their grandchildren, to do better than they've done, to be fabulously successful, because it's possible. It's happened 1,000,000 times in this country, and many, many more. However, if you want to convert a country like the United States of America into a Marxist, socialist, collectivist nation, you got to find a way of making people disenchanted, making them feel hopeless, making them feel the complete victims of injustice. Race is a lot more effective, because if you can use the emotional memory of people who've been told repeatedly how victimized black folks have been, how victimized minorities or people of color, as they like to frame it in general, have been, And you can convince them that there is no hope because America is hopelessly racist, systemically racist, white supremacist, that the whole system is against you. Then you set people up for the answer. You need the fundamental transformation of this nation. It just will never work to give fairness and justice and opportunity to quote unquote people of color or black folks or African Americans, again, as they like to frame it. And so there is this incessant drumbeat because that's the key to the revolution that they want to effect in this country. So did you see the recent news that one writer said that camping out is racist, and black people, when they camp out, they need to have safe spaces? And do you remember the one where I think the American Medical Association said this, the BMI index is racist because you shouldn't be measuring the fat content of black people or whatever the same way you measure white people, and that system was racist. I mean, folks, everything is racist. And the reason why you see these little nitpicky things being brought up, microaggressions. I mean, I read critical race theory, and one of the things they said in critical race theory is if you as a black person or a person of any non-European ancestry have a bad interaction with an American of European ancestry, it's because of racism. Now, you can have a bad interaction with somebody of non-European ancestry, and that's okay. That's just normal. That's just life. But if it's with white people, as they put it, that's racism. So you walk into a cleaner's and you're expecting to pick up your clothes, and your clothes aren't ready, and the person behind the counter happens to be black, and the person picking up the clothes happens to be white. And the person said, well, when are they going to be ready? You told me they would be ready yesterday, and here I am today, and they're still not ready? Oh, that's a microaggression. I mean, no, it's really just life. But you see, the left has to do this. They want to perpetuate hopelessness and despair and the sense that, I don't know what that is, folks. That's an alarm, though. Hopelessness and despair. And oh, I know what that is. That's an alarm system somewhere, one of the buildings I've got under my supervision. Anyway, that there's no hope. I mean, even the camping grounds are racist, right? Even the medical system is racist. I mean, I had somebody tell me not too long ago, the reason why there's a higher level of mortality for women, black women, in maternity is because the systemic racism of the medical system. And my question was, the person didn't like it, but when I said, my response was, so what are they, targeting them to kill them? And kind of looked at me, got a little irritated, like, well, of course not. It's so much more subtle than that, and you just aren't capable of understanding the subtlety of this. Well, you know, that bothered me because I thought, well, the facts are the facts in terms of what the data shows. If the data shows that black women do suffer more from mortality in maternity and children, infant mortality is greater among black women, what's going on there? Because I don't buy this. Well, it's the magic of systemic racism. It doesn't mean anybody is racist, has behaved racist, has done anything racist, but it's just in the air. It's in everything. And when I started doing some research, guess what I found out? The single greatest factor in the health of a woman in maternity is the presence of the father of the baby. Women are much healthier and much less likely to suffer any kind of medical complications for herself or the baby if the father of the baby is there every step of the way supporting that mother. When the mother is on her own and the father has abdicated and absented himself, it is much more likely that that mother is going to have problems of a medical and physical nature, because of course she's going to be under a lot more pressure emotionally and psychologically as well. And I thought, now, you know, that's interesting. Nobody wants to talk about that, because what community suffers the greatest from women abandoned by the men who impregnate them? The black community. 72% of births out of wedlock. Where are the men? They're nowhere to be found. Not all, of course, because that means that 28% are born in wedlock, right? And then that means probably of 72%, there's some men who do stick around and try to be supportive. But many of them walk away. Basically, this baby mama pathology. Most important thing is impregnate a woman, not taking care of a child. Who has time for that? And we justify all this stuff. Oh, it's racism, it's racism, it's racism. Because what that means is you have no control over your own destiny. You have no control over your own life. Everything in your life is determined by someone else. And that is a mythological, nondescript, non-existent white man who is controlling every aspect of your life. I mean, this stuff is insane. It's pathological. But I tell you what, it serves the purpose, doesn't it? It produces the hopelessness, the despair, the bitterness, the anger, the division, the hatred that the Democrat Party and the left want for this country. Because that's what it takes for them to control the black vote. Because they're not doing anything for black people. So you got to basically manipulate people with fear and anguish and hatred and bitterness. And but we care, and we're going to rescue you, please. I mean, the people tell me the people who engineered 36% of black babies being murdered in the womb, these are the people who care about black folks? Give me a break. The people who have engineered 355 children being murdered in the inner cities of our country over the last 3 years, please, really? These are the people who care about black folks? When the only thing standing between most black people and the criminal class in these communities is police officers, and they want to tell people you ought to hate the police and defend and protect the thug, the criminal who is out murdering and raping and robbing and just committing wreaking absolute havoc on the community. But you ought to defend that person and hate the cop who's protecting people from that person. I mean, this stuff is, again, it's irrational. But every communist revolution has been irrational, because every communist revolution has said, what you've got is terrible, but what we're going to give you is going to be, oh, that's going to be utopia. And folks, Marxism is nothing but a slave state. That's all it is. Marxism turns every single person under its control into a slave, because you are at the behest of the state. You must do what the state tells you to do, say what the state tells you to say, think what the state tells you to think, work where the state tells you to work, and live as the state tells you ought to live. So that's what the left is selling. That's what the Democrat Party is selling. Which brings me to a couple of stories that I think are very, very interesting in terms of helping us see exactly what is going on here. Let me bring up my notes. I mentioned yesterday the story about Ice Cube. Well, Ice Cube did an interview with Tucker Carlson, and he was asking Tucker, or Tucker was asking him, about what's going on in the black community. This is Ice Cube, right, from NWA. Yeah, exactly. But he's seeing the light. But he said, a lot of people make a lot of money off of enmity between various ethnic groups. That's Ice Cube. Remember, this is the guy who used to sing all kinds of nasty gangster rap. I don't know whether he still does that or not, but he said a lot of people make a lot of money. Well, here's what he failed to mention. A lot of people get a lot of power off of that too, and that's what the Democrat Party does. They get a lot of power from it. And then Ice Cube says this, it's not about race. It's not about color. He says, they're the ones pushing it in our face all the time that we're separate. Say it's a never-ending, winless battle of race and color. Wow. I mean, I am, praise God. I would have never expected to hear that out of Ice Cube, but I am elated because he's absolutely right. You know, folks, I have been reading a book called Slavery and Englishmen. Slavery and Englishmen. It is a very, very interesting book because it points out something that I've said many, many, many times. It's not the skin, it's the sin. And the book goes into a fairly extensive description. Well, first of all, it covers slavery in just about every continent and talks about what it looks like based upon the writings of Englishmen as they began to travel the world and see slavery, and how Englishmen began to view slavery and how they thought about it, you know. And it talks about how Christianity shaped their thinking and how their experiences and what they saw shaped their thinking and how they thought of England as a place that didn't practice slavery, even though many English people did. But for the most part, they weren't enslaving black people. They were enslaving other English people and Irish people. He goes into an extensive discussion of the English plantation that they put Irish people on, and the descriptions of Irish people, the denigration and dehumanization of Irish people to justify their enslavement. But he talks in this book about slavery all over the world. And once again, it brings me to the point that people are holding on to slavery in this country because they have no understanding of the sweep of history and no understanding of the fact that subjugating people used to be the norm, not the exception, but the norm. You conquered people, you enslaved them, or some of them, or many of them. That's just the way it went. And by the way, you know who the biggest enslavers in history are? The Arab Muslims and the Turks, who enslaved people all over Africa and enslaved people all over Southern Europe. Because remember, they conquered Spain, the Iberian Peninsula, and much of Southern Europe, and they turned many Europeans into slaves. The harems were filled, the Arab sheikhs and caliphates were filled with European women as their concubines or their sex slaves. And by the way, the Muslims really did use women primarily as sex slaves. Of course, they used them for other things as well, but that was their primary interest. And the men often were put to work either as soldiers in their military or as galley slaves if they had ships. That's what the European countries were doing. They were grabbing people and turning them to galley slaves. Again, most of the galley slaves were not Africans. So along comes America, born in this era in which slavery is the norm all over the world. And yet, our country breaks with the norm and says, yes, we practice it, but it's wrong. we fight a civil war and lose 600,000 people, bringing an end, frankly, not only to slavery, but an end to the era in which slavery is considered to be morally appropriate or justifiable. That was over after the Civil War. Now, you'll find people all over the world who don't care about the morality or immorality of slavery, but you won't find anyone around the world who says, you know, slavery is a good thing. And that's because America, and I'll give William Wilberforce a lot of credit too, but America primarily broke the mold and said slavery is inherently morally wrong. We passed the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments to make that clear, to enshrine that in our Constitution forever. And yet, the Marxists and the socialists are running around this nation trying to convince us that we are the most racist nation that ever existed and that every black person in this country is a victim. And for that matter, every, again, person of color is a victim. Let me end with this. You know what the most racist country in the world is right now? I'm convinced of this. I haven't done an extensive sociological study to prove this, but I believe it's true based upon my anecdotal understanding of Chinese society and my reading of history. The most racist nation on earth today is China. Now, I don't say that every person in China is a racist, because there are many Christians in China who are caught up in that slave system. They would love to get out. But the Communist Party of China that runs China, these people are racist to the core. You ought to read a book called Red Cobalt by Siddharth, and it's about the mining industry in the Congo and the Chinese who primarily preside over that. And you hear some of the remarks of the Chinese overlords, what they have to say about Africans. Where do they get that? They get that because that's the nature of their culture. They think that dark-skinned people are animals, basically, who really don't deserve to be treated like human beings. And by the way, they see Europeans as pretty much the same way, above the darker-skinned people, but still far beneath the Chinese. They're racist to the core. And anybody who's imbued with that culture thinks the same way, that the Chinese are the superior people, they're at the top of the food chain, and then everybody else is beneath them. See, I've said that America's not successful because we're genetically superior or racially superior, or anything else. We've been successful as a nation because we've been built on better principles. We had a better foundation, and that foundation is faith in Almighty God. And folks, all this racial stuff, that's what it comes down to. That's what we've got to come back to if we want to rid ourselves of it. Acts 17:26 says, he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and determine their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings, that they might seek the Lord. One race, one blood, many iterations. That's what the Bible teaches. That's the way we ought to think. And I believe there's only one place in the world where there's an opportunity for that ideological and biblical perspective to take hold, and that is America. Because we've got the background for it, the Judeo-Christian background for it. America is indeed a Christian cultural nation. And that's what we better come back to if we want to secure the future for our country. That's going to do it for today. My website is ewjacksonforpresident.com. You can go there and sign up to volunteer, by the way. I've already gone over the volunteer categories. Help us. We need all the help we can get. Go there and donate. We're looking for 40,000 donors in 20 states in order to be on the debate stage on August 23rd. And we're depending upon Christians primarily to help us get there, because it's quite clear that the secular world, conservative and liberal, is not interested in hearing a born-again, spirit-filled believer espouse on the issues of the day. But I will not be silenced. So God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your support in every way. You stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side.